we are here to talk about the Use Less, Green the Rest, which is our campaign in Massachusetts this year to use less energy, electricity and heating energy, and then Green the Rest, which is our work on the state level to change the way state requires electricity to be sourced by the utilities. So we'll do the energy efficiency stuff today. Mothers Out Front, for those of you who don't know, we are mothers and others who work in teams, and we engage with decision makers to get action on climate. So who are decision makers? So our state representatives, Governor Baker, absolutely, a decision. Town representatives, if you're a town, you have selectmen and you have town meeting members, so they're all, decision makers on climate. Town engineers, so elected and appointed officials, absolutely. So am I a decision maker on climate? Yes. Absolutely, right? When I go out and I buy my next car, if I buy an electric car, I'm making a decision and I'm sending a message that I want more charging stations, I want more electric cars, I want less gasoline, and I want no fossil fuels, right? If I go and I buy a gasoline car, then I'm sending a different message, I'm making a different decision on climate. I'm saying, I will donate to climate denial, excuse me, I will donate to climate denial for the next 10 to 15 years at the pump every time I go. That's the decision I'm making, or that's the decision I'm making. So I am absolutely a decision maker on climate. What I do affects what happens forward, and collectively, we make those decisions, and they matter. So we'll talk a little bit about energy efficiency, and I hope you'll walk away understanding today why it's so crucial for us to do energy efficiency, and then we'll talk about the solutions for the things you can do. So why you, why now? What's going on in the world? Right, like we're in this bizarre situation where it's very clear to the rest of the world that we have to start getting action on climate, and yet in the United States, we're like still having a debate about it. That's crazy. We're also the only country not part of the Paris Accord. That's all about reducing emissions. So are you still in it? Are you still in the Paris Accord? Because I'm in it, I'm reducing. Are you still in it? Yeah, absolutely. Great. So the other problem, we know we have this threat. We know we have climate change, and we know that we're getting extreme weather, and we have the moral obligation to protect our children. But we have a roadblock. The fossil fuel industry has a dead grip on our democracy. It is tighter and stronger than we probably realize. And the only way we're going to get through that is to take charge of our energy. They can't make you use energy, right? If you choose to reduce, you take that power back in both meanings. So to give you some numbers, because I love data and I love graphs, this comes out of the Solutions Project in Stanford. And they went through every single state, and they said, well, what are you using in energy, in electricity? What are you using for electricity? And how can we replace what you're doing now with renewable sources? So that's the stuff coming up at the bottom, right? And for those of you who are carefully looking at this, you can see we have onshore wind, which we do have in Massachusetts, but we don't have offshore wind, even though this chart of 2017, 2018 shows that we should already be there. Utility scale solar is the kind of stuff you see in those big, in Western Mass, there's a lot, Central Mass, there's a lot of big arrays. Rooftop solar is the rooftop. So we are not only short here, we now have to slide here. And the slide here is energy efficiency. We're going to get some savings from the fact that wind, water, and solar are more effective. But we also have to take this dark gray slide down, and that's the end user efficiency, and that's our efficiency. We have to reduce the emissions that we don't need and can easily reduce first, and then we have to tighten further. We have to keep tightening. We have 3.2 gigawatts of power to reduce. So we know we can do it. And we know we can do it because we've done it before. If you've ever been to a Mother's Upfront house party, a lot of the house parties we have start with this story, and you'll see the parallel. The story is that in the 1980s, we started running out of water. Our reservoir was low. We were drawing far more than was sustainable. And the answer was, well, we'll just build a pipeline. Stop me if this sounds familiar. We're just going to build a pipeline from the Connecticut and Merrimack rivers and fill the reservoir more. The environmental community and the communities that were next to these places put such a hard stop that they had to say, okay, all right, what's solution 2? And solution 2 was the Massachusetts Water Resources Authority. And tell me if you've heard this before. They fixed leaks in the pipes so we weren't losing water. Talked to kids about turning off your faucet while you're brushing your teeth. So they went to elementary schools and did education on reduction of water use. We changed our toilets. We changed our faucets. Lots of conservation. We don't feel it now. We don't walk around saying, I don't have enough water in my house. Just don't have enough water, right? We don't have that because it's natural. It's part of what we do. It's just what's always there. We don't think about it. We turn the water off when brushing our teeth. We're saving water, and there are hundreds of calls to the Department of Public Works. If you see there's a water leakage on the ground as you're driving by or walking by, we fix those things. But you can see how much we fixed it. So even though Massachusetts has been adding people, the amount of water we're drawing is much lower because we are doing a lot of water conservation. Now, what's the difference? Why can't we reduce with fossil fuels the way we've been able to reduce with water? Because of who's behind it? Right. Nobody makes money putting water in a river. That's not a thing, right? Nobody makes money on that. But lots of people make lots of money by putting natural gas into a pipeline and sending to your house. Right? So it's not that we don't have the technology, and it's not that we don't have the know-how, and it's not that we can't do it. It's that there is a great financial interest for us not to do it. So that's why we're behind, and that's why you could understand what's happening at the federal level for that reason. So let's talk about what you can do, how you could take your power back. So how does New England generate electricity? What do you think is the primary source? Oil? Electricity. Generating electricity, okay, anybody else? Natural gas, nuclear. Yeah. So I took this, and again, if you love data as much as I do, ISO New England, which is our regional nonprofit, non-biased, supposedly organization that tells everybody how and when to switch on their generation and regulates to make sure we have energy, has this on their website. You could every day, up to date, go and look and see what percentage of electricity is generated from which source. So I was putting this presentation together in July, and I went and looked. So in New England, half is natural gas, a third is nuclear, and then you get hydro, refuse, that's us burning trash, wood, coal, wind. That tiny yellow is solar. This is in July. And the black, I can't remember, like petroleum or some other such thing. So what happens when nuclear goes away? Because we are decommissioning a lot of our nuclear plants because nobody wants nuclear next to them for clear reasons. What happens?
Well, the fossil fuel companies want the natural gas to eat up the entire rest of the nuclear.
That's right. It's going to get replaced with natural gas. Right? That's like you just sub out one for the other. And so actually this picture is even worse if you take Massachusetts by itself. In Massachusetts, we are at 2/3 natural gas. So when the governor says we need more natural gas to diversify our energy sources, he's wrong. And I know he can read a pie chart, so I will leave it up to you to think about why he says things like that. So let's think about your emissions. Now let's start reducing, and how do we get there? Food is 14%. So this is average household, right? Obviously for your individual home, you'll have to think about how yours is. But food is 14%. So there, going a meal or two without meat is your fastest, especially red meat, is your fastest path to reduction. Transportation, that's your biking, public transport, and electric car, right then and there. And if you think electric cars are unaffordable, there is a company, it's not a company, it's a consumers alliance called Mass Energy, not to be confused with Mass Save, Mass Energy, and they have this program called Drive Green. And they specifically thought about this idea that people find there's this barrier to the electric car thing. And they went to dealers and got discounts for electric cars. So when you go to their website, you could see just how much you can get off the Leaf and the Bolt and the other cars that they have. You cannot get a Tesla because it's a little out of the price range, but the rest of the cars are there and you can look and you can go out and buy one. And we've had people in Brookline now go out and buy through this program and say nothing but the best, and there's lots of people here, say nothing but the best things about the transition. So that's your transportation. The stuff you buy always makes me cringe a little bit. So a quarter of your emissions are from the stuff you buy. So not the food you're buying, but the other stuff. So if you want to look into things, how to reduce that, that's the zero waste movement. That's really their thing. The going to the store is your transportation. That's like how you're getting around. And this is the stuff, like you buy a couch, that couch has a fossil fuel footprint. Somebody had to get the wood and make the filling and da-da-da-da, and then all that requires energy. And this is the stuff we're going to talk about today. Your home and your heating, and that's supposed to say cooling. So heating, cooling, and your other home, which is your electricity and all the stuff you've plugged in. That is a third of your emissions. So we're going to tackle that first third. I've given you some good ideas on the others, and you will work on that. So electricity. This is my story with our electric. I went to this company called WeGoWise when I was getting ready for this presentation. It stands for water, electricity, gas, and oil, and they are a utility tracking software. They really don't focus on individual homes, but it is an offer that is free. So you could go to wegowise.com and you could look, you could plug in your utility information. And so for me, it's electric. I don't pay anything else because I live in a condo. And you could see what you've done in the last 4 years. The other thing you could do, and I'll show that a little later, is you could do an improvement. You could say, okay, I've replaced my LED bulbs, all my bulbs with LED lights, and now how much am I saving in energy from what I did last year? And I haven't been signed up for them for 4 years. I just signed up 3 months ago, but they can pull everything that's available in my account. So if you've done anything to your house that you think might have changed your energy use in any way, and you're curious just how much, it's a place to start. And so we used to be at around 450 kilowatt hours. The spikes are July when we have to turn on the AC because we live under a Black River roof on the 3rd floor. And now we're down to around 200 kilowatt hours. And just in case you think this is like a feel-good, do-good kind of thing, we save $500 a year. That's $500 that I don't pay to the utilities because I'm not using that electricity. And so there's 4 things we did. 1, we replaced all of our bulbs with LED lights. My husband went through every single closet, chandelier, overhead, underhead, bathroom, everything, LED lights, and he found the matching, like chandelier type things. Then we started washing all of our clothes on cold water. We started hanging up our clothes. And we started running our dishwasher on a short cycle. Those 4 things, I live in a condo, so it's very similar to what a renter could control. So this is applicable to most homes. These 4 things we were able to do, and we've cut our use in half, and we're now saving real money. Now, what do I do with that money? Mass Energy Consumers Alliance will give you 100% wind. There's also community choice aggregation. That's when the town buys in, and as a bulk purchaser, you get a discount. We do that in Brookline. So we added 25%. You could go to 100%. Mine, 100% renewable electricity is now per kilowatt the same cost as what Eversource just came out with their basic rates. So everyone else outside of Brookline is getting 13% renewable for the same rate that I'm getting 100% renewable. So if you don't happen to be in a town that has done this, run to your town and have them do this. And if you live in Acton, sign up for 100% because you will save all my tricks. You already saved energy and now you can invest it back and it will still be less than what you would have used otherwise. So what do you think in your home uses the most electricity? Not air conditioning, like putting air conditioning aside. Your refrigerator, definitely, because it's always on, it's always cooling. What else? Dryers. Washing machine. Computers are always there. So the number one source of electricity use is actually lighting. And then as soon as you start thinking about it, you're like, well, obviously, of course, it's always on, right? December, we're on o'clock. We don't go to bed till 10. And when we wake up at 6, it's still dark. Half the year, the lights are on for hours at a time, right? Only in the summer can you really get away with low lights, but sometimes even, everybody has some kind of place where they still need to turn the lights on. That's why going to LED lights makes a big difference, and I'll show you the difference between LED, CFLs, and incandescents on the next slide. Your refrigerator, that's a no-brainer. It's always on, so it's always going to suck energy. Now, if you're looking for a new fridge, go for Energy Star, because Energy Star models use less energy than the non-Energy Star models. And my husband and I bought this tiny refrigerator that's counter depth. And we bought it when we had just bought our condo and we had no money, so we went for like the smallest, cheapest thing we could get. And we said, well, when we have kids, we'll replace it because God, who could feed 4 people out of this tiny thing? We still have it. It works really well. It turns out you can feed 4 people out of it, and I've had 20 people to a sit-down dinner, and I have fed them out of that one refrigerator. It does not have an ice maker. It has a freezer where I put the ice trays, and it doesn't have a water filter because that's for my sink. So it's compact, and it's small, and it uses a very small amount of energy because your fridge is your second electric tug. So I also want to give a little bit of background. These are numbers in dollars you're going to spend on an average household. So these are done by the average in the United States. This is yearly average of your cost, right? So we're like looking at around $200 for your lighting expenditure. Average in the United States is around 12 cents per kilowatt hour. In Massachusetts, we're at 20 cents per kilowatt hour. So our electricity is more expensive than what these numbers are based on. So that means when you reduce, you're going to reduce even more than these numbers show. Does that make sense? Like, our electricity is more expensive, which I think is sort of a blessing in disguise because then we get more of the savings when we reduce it, and it gives us more of the impetus to reduce. When energy is cheap, we use it however we want. When it gets expensive, then you start thinking about, how can we cut it? So the next one is clothes washer hot water, and this is not a mistake that there's also clothes washer cold water. This is to show the difference between hot and cold water washing. So there's about a 5-fold difference in the electricity you're going to use. So if your washing machine has a cold water settings, which they should all have, try it out a couple of times. And the double bang for your buck here is that the clothes will last longer. So going back to that stuff you buy, you're also reducing the stuff you buy because you're not wearing out the colors as much and you're not making holes as much. You're not getting as much wear on the cotton. The next thing is TV cable box. So your cable is watching TV when you're not even there. It's just always on. Your Apple TV, it's always updating itself and always sucking energy to load itself up with stuff that you aren't going to look for another 24 hours. But it's using energy. But unless you think about it, that's what's happening. That electricity is going. Now, coffee makers, microwaves, anything that doesn't have an off switch could potentially be using electricity. And there are little meters that you can get, or you could just do what we did and just get switches for all these things. Now our microwave has a little green switch that's so bright that you could see it's on, and you flip it off and it's off. You know, my kids know how to do it. It's just it's just a part of us turning on the microwave, which we use for at most 3 minutes a day. And the other 23 hours and 57 minutes, it's off. Clothes dryer. So you can see that's a pretty heavy load also. We hang our clothes now, and I'll show you the racks we use. Dishwasher, if you have a short cycle, I'll show you the difference there. Let's look at that. So this is from a book called Cooler, Smarter, Practical Steps for Low Carbon Living. It's out of the Union of Concerned Scientists. They think a great deal about climate change and what that means to us and our world stability. They think a great deal about nuclear also. But this book is specifically about ways to reduce energy use. So we started talking about lighting. This is the difference in yearly cost, again, based on national average in a typical American home that has incandescent bulbs versus LED bulbs. Do you see the LED? It's so tiny over here. 10 times, 9 times the difference in the amount of dollars you're going to pay, but therefore kilowatts you're using and therefore emissions you're creating. So if you have not yet gone to all LEDs, like now is the time. And if you want, Mass Save will bring you free LED light bulbs, but probably for only the next year. They are becoming so cheap, so easy to get, that Mass Save is moving on to the next bigger lift, and you'll be on your own for bulbs. Laundry, we talked about this. Cold water washing, about $200 a year. Go ahead. And if you do have to dry, because this sort of hanging up business doesn't work for every family, but if you do have to dry, go for a strong cycle to get as much of the water out. And these are my racks. So maybe the rugs were not the best picture because it looks like it takes up half the room. It doesn't actually take up half the room, but I really did hang up my rugs to dry there, my kitchen rugs. So it's I have nine wires across, and I hang one load of laundry here. And so we've just started doing laundry differently. Before it used to be load after load after load, and we'd spend all day doing laundry. Now we just do maybe a load or 2 a day. And I have 2 of these racks, and 1 load goes on each. And it's just a natural process. In the winter, it adds wonderful humidity to the space. So it's, again, a double whammy because you're getting humidity. You didn't have to use electricity to create it, and you're not using the energy to dry it, and your clothes last longer when they're not dried. It's that's just the best way to go. And you can have floor racks, and there are racks that mount off the wall and go like this. So your refrigerator, everybody has at least one, right? So how many people have a second one? You don't have to raise your hand. Usually people sort of do a little very uncomfortable sort of move when I mention this. So I hear this a lot. We had a terrible refrigerator. It was really inefficient. We went out, we got a great new one. It's really efficient, it's terrific. And so we put the old one in the basement. Now we just store chicken in it. So that is not energy efficiency. You have actually added to your load, not subtracted it. If now that I've said that you're feeling really uncomfortable about your second refrigerator, Mass Save will take it away if it works. Now, the reason they take it away if it works is because they are about reducing electricity. So if it's not working, it's not sucking up electricity, they don't want to care. They don't want it. But you get $50, and I asked, and I could not figure out on Mass Save website what this $50 was for. They just say $50 rebate, and I thought it'd be for light bulbs or hopefully not another fridge. Turns out it's just cash. You just need $50 to go spend on something, which you're going to spend on light bulbs because you're going to get LEDs. It's the way to go. So if you do have a second fridge and you're ready to let it go, Mass Save will come and take it away. So phantom loads, we talked about this a little bit. Go ahead. And this is what happens. I told you about the WeGoWise website, and that you could see when you reduce phantom loads by adding power strips with an off switch between anything that's sucking energy when you're not using it and you don't need it. Like, don't switch off your fridge, obviously, but your Apple TV, anything that's not live recording something, so your coffee maker, etc. Phantom loads, put a power strip in it. You'll reduce your energy, and I did this test on our own. My husband saw this presentation, which, let me tell you, I can present in front of anybody. My family came to the one we did in Brookline. Totally different business. But he then walked around the whole apartment and was like, that's a phantom load, that's a phantom load. We have this hard drive that's a phantom load. And he put strips and turn-off switches on all of them. So the dark orange is the new electricity that we're using, like the electric kilowatt hours this year. The lighter yellow is last year's. So you could see that we are shaving off, there's the phantom loads. We've done nothing else in our house. We've not, November is still November, the sun still comes up at the same time, we still turn the lights on at the same time, there's still LEDs. There's really not a lot of other wiggle room. So that is our reduction in phantom loads. So it really makes a difference.
Do you do that with Wi-Fi? With the
So if you do it with your Wi-Fi, it's only if, yes, your Wi-Fi is always using energy. Obviously, it's always on. We haven't done that with our Wi-Fi because I think it would be pretty, we would be nonstop turning it on and off because I sit down to work, he sits down to work. Maybe at nighttime. Like the way you're thinking. I'll see what my husband's face looks like when I go suggest that at night. All right, your dishwasher. We talked about this a little bit. Always, anytime you're buying an appliance, you're looking for an Energy Star model. So with your dishwasher, look for a quick cycle, any kind of cycle that sounds like it should be shorter, and then put into Google your dishwasher model and then user manual. And you get one of these charts. Go ahead. And on these charts, you're going to see the water use you have and the water use for regular versus quick. Go ahead. And then you're going to see the water use, the temperature, the wash temperature between regular and quick. So first of all, this thing is only on for 30 minutes instead of 120 or 150 minutes. Okay? So, and even while it's on, the temperature that it's heating my already hot water is lower. Now, this does not dry. My quick wash does not dry. It just washes because it is a dishwasher. It's not a dish dryer. So it's just washing. And the way I dry the dishes is I open the door, I pull the top rack out a little bit, and I get natural humidity, and in the winter, it's blissful. So that's your dishwasher, and that's what to do there. Go ahead. So the Mass Save program, it doesn't matter if you're a renter or an owner, if you pay electric or gas bills, Mass Save will come for you. And they will give you free bulbs, for electricity, free bulbs, free power strips, and then they'll give you incentives for other things depending on what you need at home. So now let's talk about heating, cooling, and water heating. What's the number one heating fuel? Stop me if you've heard this before. Number one heating fuel in Massachusetts? It's natural gas, okay? So that's natural gas, that's oil, and that tiny little sliver is electricity. So when we think about the fact that we have to electrify, right? We know we can't keep burning fossil fuels. Burning fossil fuels in your home, in your basement, is just as bad as a power plant. Well, it's a scale less, but you're still burning fossil fuels. So when we have our heat, and don't get me wrong, our association just changed 2 years ago, 3 years ago from oil to gas, and we're so excited. We were like, we're doing a great thing for the environment. This is awesome. Not really. We realized that that is just really good marketing, and that natural gas is still a fossil fuel. We are still contributing to the climate change problem, and we are still going to have to figure out an electric solution later on. So we're just kicking the bucket down the road. So there was a little, on the previous slide, there was a little thing that said 80% from Pennsylvania. So our natural gas, according to National Grid, 80% of their gas now comes from Pennsylvania. And what does that mean? Fracked gas. So I will let you think about that on whether or not you want that in your house. So the way to, so we're going to do two things. First, we're going to reduce what we're using in fossil fuels, and then we're going to electrify. So insulation is kind of like the warm coat you're wearing outside. Weatherization and sealing, air sealing, is zipping up the coat. So you want the fat, thick layer, but you also want all the seams on the coat covered so that you're not getting the cold air through. That's the same as in your home. You're going to want insulation, and the places where you're losing the most is floors, walls, and ceilings. Somebody looked at this and went, fireplace, 15%, what? And then realized that her fireplace is basically letting all the heat out of her house in the winter, and there are solutions for that if you want to talk to me after. Ducts and plumbing penetrations, unless you've caulked around that, are next. So attic insulation, if every home in the United States, and there are a lot of them, but if every home insulated just their attic, didn't insulate anything else, but just did their attic, we would reduce 1.8 billion, with a B, $billion in energy costs. And when we talk about taking our power back, there it is right there. The fossil fuel industry will notice that money, right? Because it's all about the money. We talked about this at the beginning with the difference in the water problem and this natural gas problem that we're having. So Mass Save will give you incentives to insulate your home. So what you do is you call them up and you say, I'd like an audit. They come to your house. They give you bulbs. They give you power strips. They check if you have insulation. Turns out you don't. They'll say, okay, you could have this much insulation. You go to an insulation contractor, and that they have a list of approved contractors. And the same with weatherization. They cover a lot of the cost, if not all of the cost. So this is, don't think about like you're going to spend thousands on this. They want you to do this because to them, the incentive is the reduction of your energy. And if you're in a fixed income, like that's even better. There's even better solutions there. So Mass Save doesn't do blower door tests, but if you want to get serious about insulation and really careful about where the leaks are and how to fix them, blower door tests will show you that, and there are specialists who do them. There's a company called Bigmeister. Paul Eldrenkamp started it 20-some years ago, and he did green building before everybody knew what green building was. They take insulation to a new level. And if you are considering electrification and don't know how to do it, they are great people to talk to also, because that's what they do. They are working to get fossil fuels out of your home.
What's the name of it?
It's right here.
Jason Taylor?
Jason Taylor's their insulation guy, but if you call Bigmeister, they are not a Mass Save approved contractor. So if you're going the Mass Save route, you go the Mass Save route. If you want to go the full on, I'm going to fix my home and I'm not going to be frozen in the winter ever again, that's the other choice. So you have two options. They both have pros and cons. So what are these things? Let me know. Thermostats? What kind of thermostats? Programmable thermostats. How many people have a programmable thermostat? Keep your hand up if you've programmed it. That's actually pretty good. That's really good. So the value in a programmable thermostat, which is why I asked if you have actually programmed it, the value in the programmable thermostat is that you can decrease your temperature when you're out of the house if you have a regular schedule, and you can decrease it at night. So that's a savings, 10 to 15% off your cost, right? So we recommend 78. in the summer, 68 in the winter. 78 I get questions on for air conditioning, and it seems high. Well, if you think about what it feels like outside and it's comfortable, 78 is actually pretty good there. And if I shouldn't have to wear wool socks in air conditioning, which I often have to do. 68 is optimal in the winter, but like, go ahead, take that down. People are cringing in the audience. Go ahead to 65. Bring it as far down as you can. There's no limit on the bottom. Just keep on going down. So long as your pipes don't freeze. You're totally good with me. I will be very proud. And your plants don't care. Neither do your pets. You're going to be totally fine. And you'll feel the savings in your pocketbook. So the reason I asked how many people have programmed their thermostats is that if you look at these numbers, they're not super encouraging. So this is taken from air conditioning, but you can imagine that blown hot or cold air is similar. So that's all our homes. So we could twiddle down, twiddle down, twiddle down. Homes have a programmable thermostat is 41%. And of those, 12% actually program their thermostat. That is heartbreaking and really bad. And I want to talk to the 29% of the people who did not program their programmable thermostat. So if you don't have one, Mass Save will give you one. If you don't like the one they give you, they have a discount on a second, slightly better model. So there should be no excuse whatsoever. Again, the reason they give you the thermostats is because it saves energy, and they want you to save energy. Go ahead, next slide. So now that we've reduced all the use that you're going to have because you've insulated, you've weatherized, and you've gotten your programmable thermostat set up, how do you go electric? Now, this is not a cheap trinket, but I'm presenting it to you because I want you to think about what you're going to do once your current heating system dies. Because once it dies, and it's 5 degrees outside, and it's February, and you're really cold, and it's an emergency situation, you're just going to replace it with whatever is there. And if it's oil or gas, you're going to get another oil or gas. But that's not where we have to go. We have to go electric. So to go electric, the solution is heat pumps. There's an outdoor unit. There's an indoor unit. The outdoor unit and indoor unit connect through a conduit, which has an in and a return. The outdoor units, depending on the model you choose, can have multiple indoor units. So if you have 2 floors to your house, you could maybe have 3 or 4 heads in the bottom, 3 or 4 heads at the top. They are very efficient units. They are electric. There's no gas. If you have steam radiators as we do, or you have hot water radiators, this is not something you can plug into your basement. This is a full replacement. I have a friend who has an oil tank, and they have oil heat, but then like half the house has heat pumps, and so they use those as much as they can, and if they can't, they turn the oil on. And they don't like to use the oil, so they try to make do with the heat pumps as much as possible. The beauty of the heat pumps is they also provide air conditioning. So if you don't have air conditioning and you're thinking about adding air conditioning and your heating system might be on the fritz, consider the heat pump solution, because that's a 2-for-1 right then and there. So these heat pumps, they're really efficient. Yeah, and they're really quiet, and you can find lots of stories of families that have installed them, that love them. And one of the things that we're doing in Brookline to try to promote this idea is we're having houses tour in April for people to show off things like solar panels, electric cars, but also heat pumps, so that you could talk to another human who lives in a house with a heat pump and see how they're doing in the same climate where you would be. If you're feeling like, this is going to be an expensive project, you're right. And Mass Clean Energy Center, masscec.com, offers rebates for heat pumps. Don't worry about the fact that you're robbing the bank. You are not robbing the bank getting your rebate. You already paid for it. It's on your electric bill. There's a little tiny amount that you pay every month, and everybody pays for it the same as Mass Save. We all pay into it. So use it. If you're going to get a heat pump, you could go to masscec.com, and it's there's a different setup, like if you do one head, it's one amount, and then, so like if you're gonna do one at a time, it's one amount, and then if you're gonna just do multiple heads inside, it's a different amount, but it is a good solution for electrification. If you have a gas system right now that is getting less and less efficient as it gets older and older, now is the time to replace it with the heat pump system. Don't wait for it to go completely kaput. I think Mass Save will give you a loan for some of these projects, like insulation, et cetera, for 0%.
For up to 7 years.
And you could just pay it piece by piece, especially with the savings you're gonna have. Water heaters. So most people used to have, I don't know if most people still do, have these giant tanks. This is kind of the equivalent of leaving your tea kettle on from the morning to the evening so that you can have a cup of hot tea in the evening. But nobody does that because that's crazy. But that's the equivalent of having a giant tank in your basement that's always hot. Even if you insulate it, that water is still always hot, even if you're not using it. The next solution, so this is gas usually. The next solution is, this is usually also gas. It's called on-demand water heater, and it uses a little bit more gas while it's on. But as a total savings for the total, you're gonna get a third to a half of this tank giant monster. Because this is only on when you're using hot water, and it is not on when you're not. So the question of the day was, is there an electric solution? Because the whole point, we want to get out of gas, right? We want to get out of the fossil fuels. So the two electric solutions I was able to find is this thing. It's called heat pump water heater. And it works on the same concept that air source heat pump works for cooling and heating your home. But instead of heating the air in your home or cooling the air in your home, it does water. So it just injects heat into your water and keeps it hot. It's an electric solution. And this is what the company I mentioned before, Bigmeister, uses when they electrify homes. When you're getting out of gas, this is where you go. They have a fan, so don't put it in your bedroom. But in your basement, the mice will probably be okay. And this little thing, I was so excited when I found. So if you are building an addition or you're building something where you have access inside the walls, or at least access around the sources where you would need to use hot water, this is an on-demand electric. It has to be close to, in order to not take down our power grid with the amount of electricity you're gonna need, it needs to be close to the source. So it's not a great picture, but the sink is right here. And there's a pipe that you can see, that's the return. And there's a cold water that goes into it, and then a hot water that comes out and goes straight into the hot water faucet. And it is hot and instant and awesome and electric. So especially if you're building a new bathroom or you're doing a new addition, you put one of these on each place where you need, or you put one on two places where you need, but you want it, it's not the same as the solution that you have in the basement of your home that's feeding the whole house. It's more distributed. But it is electric, and you don't need to run gas lines to it. It's the electricity. So those are my solutions, and we'll have a little bit of time afterwards to talk about amongst ourselves. But I want to leave you with this one story. So in the early 1990s, there was a little girl in New York City. Her name was Nora. She was walking down the street with her dad, and she saw a homeless man. And she said, "Daddy, why is that man homeless? Why can't we take him home?" And her dad was like, "Well, we can't really take him home. And there's lots of reasons why he's homeless, but I wonder if we could do something to help them." So her dad thought about it, and he decided, this kid's 4, right? Like, what can I do that's accessible to a 4-year-old? And he decided to collect pennies. Just pennies, just little pennies, 100 to $1. They had a penny jar in the house, probably a couple bucks in it. And then he said, well, why don't we collect pennies and we'll go around the house, we'll go around our apartment building. They were in New York City, so they had lots of apartments. We'll go around apartments and we just collect everybody's pennies. We'll put them in a bank and we'll donate that money to charity, a charity that helps homeless people. And so we'll learn how to collect money for something that's good and put it to help others. So they did that, and then the next year, they did not just their building, but they went to her school, and then they went to other schools, and then they went to more schools, And then they went outside of New York City to other states who were interested, places that were interested. And so they had these kids who one day a year would schlep a bag of heavy, heavy pennies that they had collected all around their house and their neighbors to the school to put into even heavier bags that were then trucked to the bank, right, to put into an account so they could do something good. And these little trickles of pennies, in the 25 years they've been operating, amounted to $10.5 million in pennies, right? If we took a survey of how many pennies we have between us here now, we probably wouldn't raise $1. But when you put a lot of small actions into one big collective pot, it makes a difference. $10.5 million to nonprofits is a huge amount of money. But they also did something beyond just the collection of the money. They also taught kids what it means to have empathy, what it means to be philanthropic, to go out and help others who are not as fortunate as we are. And that's built into the process. And so what we have to do with our energy and our work at home is we don't just reduce it, but we make it part of life. We teach our kids. When my kids ask, why don't we drive to the theater? I say, because our car burns fossil fuels and we contributes to climate change. And they're like, okay, so we don't do that, right? It has to be part of our everyday normal life. And so I leave you with this story and this last question of what will you do? Thank you.